Hello, everybody. This is Nanette Kennedy with Humanity's Team and the Evolution Revolution. And we are reading Tomorrow's God. And we are on chapter 5. What page was that again?
Page
72.
Page 72. And I'm glad to see everybody here. Bima and Linda, Mary, and Ada. All right. So anyway, you guys have a great reading today. I'm feeling a little under the weather. And do you have the channel or the remote in front of you, Linda?
Say that again?
Do you have the remote so that you can turn it off?
No, but I think when we all leave, it'll automatically turn it off.
Okay. All right. Right. Well, have fun, and I will talk to you guys later.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Boy, I have to turn it over to you or ends the meeting.
Or just leave it on.
All right. I was just going to
Can
leave
you
it
just
on.
leave it on?
Talk to you later.
Or you can. Okay. Okay. So I think we know what we're doing here. Thank you to Mary for covering for me while I was gone. I really appreciate that. It's always nice to know that things can continue and don't have to come to a screeching halt just because I have something going on in my life. Okay, so we're on page 72 in Tomorrow's God, Our Greatest Spiritual Challenge. And this is Neil speaking at the moment. Because human beings would never do the things they are now doing to the earth, much less the things they are doing to each other, if they thought they were doing all these things to themselves. Exactly. Self-preservation would kick in. Your built-in cellular encoding, survival, would immediately preclude such behavior. You would instinctively repel from it. You would never do things to your own body that you do without a second thought to the body of another. You could never treat your own feelings the way you treat without giving it a second thought, the feelings of another. You could never do to your own family or your own country what you do to the families and the countries of another. The only way you can justify treating other countries, other cultures, other people the way you do is to imagine, no, to insist that they are separate from you. To make this separation more vivid and to give yourselves justification for acting the way you do, you also insist that these others are separate from God. Only you are united with God. Only you are God's people. Only you are following God's plan for salvation. The fact that your understanding of God's plan for salvation is killing half the human race is of no concern to you. The reason they are dying is either because they deserve to die, kill the infidels, or because they have unwittingly brought about their own demise by not following the path to the one and true God, who is separate from them and connected only to you by means of some special covenant or revelation or understanding. And this is how your human theologies have created your cultural story around yesterday's God. It is why yesterday's God has become one of humanity's greatest downfalls. Oh my God, don't say that. It is Satan who is the downfall of man. Don't say that God is man's downfall. That is apostasy. By yesterday's God, I mean yesterday's ideas about God, yesterday's conceptualizations about God. These are what may have been humanity's downfall. They had not led humanity to the place where it says it wishes to go. They have not brought peace, harmony, and happiness. They have not produced the golden age of enlightenment. They have brought tears and anger and violence and bloodshed and untold anguish and terrible destruction across the globe and around the world. God herself has not done this, but your ideas about God have. God himself would never do such a thing, but human beings would and have. And tomorrow's God will change all this? The ideas about God that humanity will embrace on that future tomorrow can and will affect all of us in a very. So as I said, this really isn't a modest shift in our conceptualizations about God. This is a major change and would in turn create a massive alteration of our cultural story. It would dramatically alter what we tell each other about life. I'm not sure humanity is ready for a change of that order of magnitude. Human beings have a complicated relationship with change. They don't like it very much. And that is why human beings have always had a complicated relationship with God. End of chapter. Welcome, Shabana.
Thank you, Linda. I apologize for being late.
No worries. You look magnificent.
Oh, thank you. It's my birthday. I was taken out for breakfast.
Oh, well, happy birthday, Shabana. How beautiful.
Thank you. I'm 64 and proud of it.
Good for you.
Thank you. How was your, where were you, Linda, and how was it?
We were on a road trip. We drove down to California and
Wonderful.
We drove back.
We missed you.
Yeah, I missed you guys too.
Mary did very well.
Oh, thank you.
That's what I've heard. I appreciate her filling in. So any discussion on this, or shall we move on?
It just makes me feel like crying. It makes me feel like crying because if people really felt this way, you know, it really would change everything. And I guess it's like crying at all the stupidity that humanity has perpetrated from all these feelings of separation. And I mean, it's also unnecessary. And then,
yeah. Go on.
And then, you know, I know that the idea is we change it little by embodying this new idea. Just, I look at the world and then I don't want to look back at the world again. It's so far from this beautiful idea. Over.
I think that I take comfort in knowing that no damage has been done. Right? So we can look out at the world and we can see this mess that through our forgetting we've created. And at the same time, we can know that because we are divinity in form, that there's nothing wrong here. Ultimately, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing bad. Because it's all divinity in action. we're not living our loving lives at the moment. We're not doing what we came into form to do. But there's no damage being done. There's no harm, no foul. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I know this to be true.
I think it's that, you know, from a human perspective, it looks like there's a lot of carnage like happening to other humans and to species becoming extinct and habitats being lost. And I know that from a higher perspective, if everything is, you know, spirit informed, then nothing is really lost and it's all still spirit, just not in the same form. But from a human perspective, you know, there are a lot of tragic stories being played out for a lot of life forms. That's what's hard to believe. Oh.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. And I think that's the challenge, is to find a way to stay in that elevated consciousness, that place of elevated consciousness. Because by staying in that space, we create the opportunity for other people to become aware of that space and to move into that space. I think. Over.
So, like, how do compassion and empathy look in that space, or do they exist there?
That's a great question. I think they don't exist in that space, or there's no need for them, because in that space, you're in oneness.
Okay, gives me something to try practicing. Over.
Anyone else? Or
yeah,
go on.
I have a question about that. I was listening to the radio today about the plight of refugees in Greece, that there are 70,000 where only 7,000 are supposed to be, something like that. That there are rats and no toilets, etc. The infrastructure is just not there. So does the same thing that you said to Mary a minute ago apply? I mean, if I were the one there, like the man who was speaking to the reporter that his children and his wife were living in conditions where there were rats, how does the oneness apply there? None of us is living that way.
Yeah, we are.
With
Yeah,
rats?
we are.
With rats?
Yeah.
How?
Yeah. Because we're all one.
Okay, but the actual physical rat there is not something that any of us have here.
And actually, it isn't something they have there either, because remember, there isn't anything out there.
I think what was raising is the idea of consciousness, so that whether you're living in your own prison within, or whether you're living with a prison with four walls, or with poverty, or with rats, we're all one in a level of consciousness. I don't know if you know what I mean. It's like symbology.
I kind of heard what you said, Anne, but you're whatever you've done with your microphone, whatever change has happened, it's not good. It's not making it. It makes it really hard to hear you and to understand what you're saying.
Thank you for saying that, because I was having technical problems. Is this better?
That's way better.
Okay. So anyway, I did want to say one thing to the past before this. This kind of threw me off the track, but with what you were saying about keeping a level of consciousness, about just stabilizing. Someone told me that they said, it's not that I'm unable, I'm just not practiced. And I love that.
Right.
Because, yeah, so it's like the qualities of being merciful and compassionate and having a lot of humanity and everything. It's like we need to practice it a lot. Some days I feel like I'm just watching how I react, like it's not what happens, but it's how I respond to it. And I wonder, why am I responding this way? And I've just started to notice how much I come out of my heart and then how long it takes me to get back in there. And it just feels like that's the impression of each day, is how much I can keep my heart open, or watching how much or what makes it closed.
You know, I think that that's actually what you're observing is a function of the ego, because that's one of the things that I really was studying while I was on vacation was because I'd been studying it before I went on vacation. And so I just thought, all right, well, I'm going to just continue this focus. And, you know, Alaska's a big state to drive out of, but you know, before we were even out of the state, I was noticing, I was having all kinds of anxiety. And what I was observing was, because it was dark, we were driving in the dark, and we were realizing that, oh, it's winter, so we're going to have a lot of driving in the dark we have to deal with, you know. And then I became questioning of my husband's eyesight in the dark and in the dusk. And because there were several things that happened that were just like, okay, I'm going to get out of the car because I'm not driving to California if this is how it's going to go. Right. But what I was watching, what I became very aware of is this sort of dichotomy in myself, that there was a part of me that could just sit and be in the moment and just allow the moment to be what it was. And then there was this other part of me that, like, my hands are like grabbing on the handles, and, you know, my body is like reacting to things that my mind is not reacting to. And I just became so aware of that is the function of the ego. Every time we get into that fearful, reactionary thought process, it's the ego trying to take over and save us, you know.
Yeah,
and
but it's also we shift to a fear-based reality instead of a love-based reality. Thus,
right.
the opening, you know, which
right.
is the ego. And the next stage of that is we just experience it more as contraction and release. And yeah, it is. It's all the ego. It's mine.
Yeah, right. And even that's where the fear comes from. It's where the fear comes from too. The ego
actually very real. And it's very real. Yeah.
Absolutely real. Yeah. So I would find myself sitting there, and part of me would be very calm and in the moment, and nothing was wrong, and yet my body is like, you know, grabbing onto things and acting as if the car is going to roll over. You know, and we have to become practiced in observing that.
Yeah. And
like you were saying.
Yeah, in the spiritual path, they call that witnessing, where it's you begin to witness who's saying that or what's saying that. What's the consciousness behind that that's witnessing the one person that can sit there and is calm and peaceful, and the other person who's in this hysterical response of panic. And there's a part of you, your consciousness, that's just watching all this take place.
Right.
And that's the essence where it comes into, I think, what Neil's describing as it comes, being able to witness like that. It's really a trip, isn't it? Kind of funny.
Yeah.
Over.
So I want to come back to Shabana. I don't feel like we answered your question.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Like, essentially, pardon?
Nothing.
I think life is a spectator sport, you know, where the ego has to just shut up and watch, because the soul, which is our how we're individuated as God, is the principal actor, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's in the awakened person, yes. And that's the process that we're going through.
Okay, so I mean, it does answer the question, because what what Anne said and what you said has made me remember. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to sign off now. I believe, are we doing the meditation now by any chance?
You want to do it now, Shabana?
Absolutely.
Okay, because then I have to leave. So thank you.
Okay.
If that's okay with you, Linda.
Yeah, I think that's okay. I mean, we're at a chapter break, so sure, do the meditation now so Anne can be included.
Okay. Lord God, we thank you that all 6 of us are here now. Mary, Linda, Anne, Nanette, Bima, and I, because we're combining our hearts and recognizing right here, right now, that it is our soul individually and collectively that's in charge, and the ego, the personality, needs to take the back seat, because we are eternal and we are one. So all the tragedies which are occurring, whether it's fires in the Amazon and Australia, or species extinction, or the mess in the oceans and the fatbergs, all of it is a part of you and a part of us, and we are all one. And we thank you for it. We accept it and we love it. Amen. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Shabana. It was lovely. And Anne has left, and so let us pick up with chapter 6, Redefining God's Character. This is Neil. Our complicated relationship with change has created a complicated relationship with God? Yes. Why? Why is that so? Because there is another world that is interchangeable, another word that is interchangeable with God, and that is change. Here we go again. Does it ever end, this continual refining of God? Redefining? We are not redefining God. We are actually fully defining God for the first time. We are expanding that definition to include ever more subtle nuances that will allow the human mind to more deeply understand the nature of God, God's character, if you please. Thus, to see divinity in more places, so to heal its sense of separation and estrangement, and to embrace its unity with the deity. That is exactly what humanity needs right now. It is what we need to see more of. Need does not exist. It's an illusion. Given where humanity says it wishes to go, however, and given what it claims it wishes to experience, this expansion of its definition of God would be useful and beneficial. Now, I said earlier that God is that which is constantly present and constantly changing, suiting itself to each moment, so that God may be understood in that moment, embraced in that moment, experienced in that moment, and expressed in that moment. I also said that the words God and life are interchangeable. And now, what I want to tell you is that life is a process of change. This is why the words God and change are synonymous. Here then comes another shift in your understanding. Yesterday's God was said to be that which never changes. That God has even been called the unmoved mover. So here is the sixth important difference between yesterday's God and tomorrow's God. Tomorrow's God is ever changing. You really want the whole paradigm, practically everything we have ever thought about God, to be thrown out, don't you? Not thrown out, expanded. You have a limited awareness. It is time to expand your awareness. In a sense, your old idea of God as that which never changes was correct. It was simply incomplete. It did not contemplate or consider that the one thing which never changed about God could be that God is always changing, that this could be the constant. In fact, it is. God is always expanding and becoming. The process of expansion and becoming never ends. It is how life functions. It is how life adapts. And it is how life sustains itself. This process is what you have called evolution. I hate to tell you this, but some things in life never change. Nothing in life never changes. Nothing? Nothing. Well, some things certainly seem not to change. Name one thing. Wait a minute, we've been here before. You've discussed this before in previous conversations using the parable of the rock. Yes, but it is good to visit this understanding again. Clarity emerges from wisdom revisited. And not everyone has read the transcripts of those previous dialogues. Okay, so we'll stick with the rock example. We'll talk about the rocks in my garden. They're there, they've been there for years, and they've not changed a bit. They're inert objects and they do not change. Wrong. They move, they change, they are in constant motion. Under a high-intensity microscope, you could see this. You would see particles constantly in motion, racing at incredible speed relative to their size, spinning their tail. It is their story. It is the story of the rock. All of life is energy in motion. Nothing stands still. Nothing, not a single thing in the universe is static. All is moving, and movement is change. Can't some things move and still remain the same? The rock in my garden looks exactly the same today as it did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, heck, 100 years ago. It's not all of the energy in the universe is vibrating at the same speed or frequency, or what you might call the same level of consciousness. Energy that is totally aware of itself moves in faster ways to produce difference. Energy that is not totally aware of itself moves very slowly, producing over and over again nearly the same pattern that existed before, until that pattern alters itself over a very long period of time. So that's why the rock looks as if it's staying the same, while my appearance changes from year to year. Year to year, try month to month, actually day to day, although those day-to-day changes, like the changes in the rock, are not noticed. Energy systems that vibrate at lower rates of speed are more dependable, more reliable, more stable. This is precisely because they produce over and over again the same pattern that existed before, until that pattern alters itself over a very long period of time. The universe, for example, spins in such a pattern. Your Milky Way has been spinning in the same way for billions of years, and you can count on it to spin the same way for billions of years more. It all has to do with levels of self-awareness. Are you saying that rocks are self-aware? Everything is self-aware, but levels of self-awareness differ. Highly self-aware energy always seeks to become more self-aware. Once an energy system becomes increasingly aware of itself, it seeks to become more and more self-aware. How are you going to keep them down on the farm once they've seen Paris? Exactly. The more you know, the more you want to know. The more you experience, the more you want to experience. This is the nature of life. Life seeks more life through the process of life itself. That's poetic. It's also true. So what I am saying here is that the faster an energy vibrates, the faster it's going to vibrate. In other words, things speed up. But what about the law of inertia, which says that an object in motion tends to stay in motion, an object at rest tends to stay at rest? Strictly speaking, nothing is ever at rest. So the new law of your new world emerging from the new spirituality would say that an object in motion tends to stay in motion, and all objects are in motion. And that motion is the process of evolution. Yes, exactly, yes. Okay, I see this, I understand it. But what does this have to do with God and me and my daily life? I said that what we were going to do here is redefine God's character. So long as humanity sees God the way it currently sees God, you will assign to God all sorts of characteristics that are simply not a part of the true nature of God and have nothing to do with who and what God is. Remember when I said earlier that the God in whom you believe isn't real, that the God in whom you believe is made up. Yes, I was pretty startled when you made that comment. Yet it's true. Yesterday's God is a God you created out of thin air, having nothing to do with ultimately reality. What I am explaining now is ultimate reality. A little of it, anyway, so that you can begin to understand, begin to grasp the complexity of it, the sophistication of it, the subtlety of the whole system. Hang in there through this short course of the physiology of God and life, because after you hear this, you will never be able to think of God in the same way again. Okay, I'm with you. I'm right with you. Good. Now, to pick up where I left off, all energy is self-aware, but not all energy is aware that it is self-aware. I beg your pardon? All of life, down to the tiniest cell, molecule, or submolecular particle, contains intelligence. This basic intelligence is built in. It's a cellular encoding. Because that is true, these tiny particles move in ways that make sense. Their movement produces a specific and predictable outcome. This outcome is called life. At the macro level, it is called the cosmology of the universe. At the micro level, it is called particle physics, superstring theory, and so forth. And somewhere in the middle, there's us. Now you're with me. Yes. Some of you call this built-in intelligence the survival instinct. All of your laws of physics and its predictability have been based on the understanding at which you have just arrived. Now comes an interesting twist. At a certain point in the process of evolution, life energy becomes aware that it is aware of itself. That's a big event, yes? You bet. It is life becoming aware of what life is in its present form. It is supremely impacting because it produces what I call the separation phenomenon. This is when an element of life first has the idea that it is separate from God. It is the first pivotal moment. Prior to this moment, energy particles express themselves as a part of an overall system. Their intelligence was experienced as the intelligence of the system. Kind of like the Borg in Star Trek. Actually, exactly like that, only without any malevolent intent. In the first pivotal moment of self-discovery, an energy unit becomes conscious of itself as a part of the system, rather than as the system itself. Its identity as part of the system soon expands into a thought that is separate from the system. Oh, yes, and this is the great OO of the universe. It is the mother of all OOs. Actually, it's true literally because it gives birth to the next emerging process of life, chaos. Chaos, as in chaos theory? Exactly. The thought of being something other than the system is what brings chaos to life. Wow, you're making physics relevant here. This is great. So go on, how does the idea of separation from the all create chaos in the system? While a unit of energy becomes self-aware, it is losing its awareness of the larger system of which it is a part. Its intelligence, which is really the intelligence of the system, is now experienced as its own intelligence. An example of this is what's occurring right now. It is? Yes. In what way? You think it is you talking, and really it is me. Part of you thinks that this explanation right now is something that is coming from your intelligence. And it is not and could not be, because you don't know any of this. Yet, because it came through you, you think it belongs to you. You think it's yours. And really, it is ours. The intelligence I'm talking about the intelligence that is now bringing these words forth. You're right. Sometimes I do think that this is all coming from me. Even when I know better, I sometimes think that. Don't feel bad, it's natural. I'm explaining to you here just how natural it is. It's a part of how life works. And of course, the intelligence is coming from you. It's coming from the part of you that is me. That is, it's coming from the system of which you are an intrinsic part. But when an energy unit such as yourself sees itself as not part of the system at all, but as a product of the system, the life form has created an illusion. It is one of the 10 illusions of humans. It is the illusion of disunity. And then along comes chaos theory and quantum physics. Yes. And quantum physics is simply the scientific explanation for how God, the system, if you please, looks at its individual parts and watches itself impacting those parts. You would call this phenomenon in spiritual terms a higher level of consciousness or increased self-awareness. It is when that which is aware experiences the fact that it affects that of which it is aware. Nothing which is observed is unaffected by the observer. The first law of quantum physics. Good. That's very good. Now the energy unit, or life form, experiences itself as part of a system again. It becomes aware that the more rapid is the vibration of its energy, the higher its frequency, and the more the impact it has on the energy around it. This is absolutely fascinating, and I can even see how this applies to my own life. The more I become self-aware, the more impact I see myself having on the life that's going on around me. And the more I have a sense of that, the more conscious I imagine I would become of my potential impact. And I can take that into account as I make future decisions. That's the way it's supposed to work. But many earthly life forms, most actually, cannot always determine their impact with precision ahead of time. So unpredictability becomes part of the system. This is called creation. It is the creation and the creator being the same thing. Everything is predictable in the energy unit you call a rock. Left to its own devices, it will continue to manifest itself in precisely the same way over an extended period. Of course, even the rock is the outcome of a larger process that produced it. It evolved out of something else. But that process took a very long time because the energy units that produce it vibrate at a very low speed and a very low frequency. Now, along comes a human being, an energy unit or life form vibrating at a much higher frequency, having the capacity to see in the rock what the rock does not and cannot see in itself. The human does something totally unpredictable from the rock's point of view. The human being picks up the rock, puts it in a tumbler, and polishes it until it reveals itself to be a shining and beautiful stone. The much slower energy system of which the rock is normally a part can also produce the same result, with the earth itself becoming the tumbler and its elements rubbing against the rock until a precious stone appears. Yet that can take eons, where a human being who knows how to move energy around consciously to produce a specific result can produce the same outcome in a few hours. This is conscious creation. I get it. Everything I do is part of the creation process inherent in all of life. And after I evolve to a really high level, I can actually predict and even control the way in which I am impacting life. I can become the master of my own destiny. Now you are indeed getting it. Now, do you see what this all has to do with your daily life? Once you understand all of this, once you start looking at life and God and creation in a new way, it brings to shift your whole ground of being. It changes the way you hold the experience of life itself and yourself in it. And so we see that all of life is creative, with the more evolved elements of life able to be consciously creative. And the more evolved a life form is, the more consciously it will create. Finally, as life forms become even more self-aware, they begin to access differing levels of consciousness, including the level of consciousness from which they themselves emerged. This produces a reversal of the separation phenomenon. The second pivotal moment, a disappearing of individual consciousness, a melting of it into the all in an experience that some Eastern mystics have called bliss or nirvana. I can achieve this. I can get to that place right now if I want to. That's what you're telling me, right? Hang on, I have to cough. That is exactly what I'm saying, yes. Bliss is the natural state of being of all life, and all life forms return to it. Highly evolved life forms move in and out of this state at will. It is the cyclical movement in and out of bliss that propels life itself and causes it to be. Bliss is the highest vibration of energy that is possible. This is heaven. This is nirvana. This is reunification with the one. This is the end of the cycle. The emergence out of bliss, the birthing that it produces, is the lowest vibration of energy that is possible. This is the beginning of the cycle. This cycle of life never ends. If it did, life itself would cease to be. Such a thing cannot occur because life will not allow it. Life is ruled by three basic principles: functionality, adaptability, and sustainability. It functions, or having atrophied to the point of near dysfunctionality, it adapts, and having adapted, it sustains itself. Always, life sustains itself. Life is eternal. All things in life support life. Then we have nothing to worry about on this planet. But it is the second of the three basic principles of life that you must watch carefully. For you see, life is eternally adaptable. That is, it will change itself. It will alter from the form in which it is expressed in order to ensure that it is sustained. what does that mean to me? What does that mean to humans? It means that your planet could become a living hell. It means that the energy system of which you are a part will adapt itself in whatever way it has to in order to make certain that life itself is sustained. And so, if you, as a part of life, adapt the life system of which you are a part in such a way that the system itself is threatened at the level of functionality, the system will counter-adapt in order to sustain itself. And you, my friend, may not like the way in which it does this. The system is bigger than your little self. And the mistake you are making is in imagining that your little self is bigger than the system, which, of course, is the big self. You do not stand outside of the system, but are a part of the system, and the system will adapt the part of it that you are before it will allow you to adapt it beyond its functional limits. The system is the process that you call change, isn't it? That's correct. The system is then what you call God. You could put it that way. Oh boy, another definition. End of chapter. Right at 11 o'clock. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 6. Does anybody have any comments before we close, since we've done the meditation already?
Just kind of like what I usually say when people talk about how we're going to, quote, destroy the planet or something. And I'm like, the planet will still be here. What we're going to do if we keep down this road is just make it like inhospitable to life in the form that it currently is, you know? Seems like that's kind of what he's suggesting there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, we're God in form, we're divinity in action. And so, and because life is adaptable and change, yeah, we're, you know, whatever, if we continue to destroy and pollute and do all of the things that we're currently doing, life will go on. The planet will survive, and we as a species will go on, and we'll still be God, and we'll still be divinity in action. But we won't, you know, we won't be in the play that we came here to be in. We'll be in a different play. It'll still be divine at that level, but we won't be doing what we came here to do, is my interpretation. I am curious if anybody has been doing the meditation, the Who meditation that was in chapter, I think it was in chapter 5.
I did it a little bit and then I forgot, so thank you for reminding me. Been doing the other thing about putting the light in my brain. Don't remember. I wanted to read it again. How he described it was another one of the sort of meditation things that was in that chapter.
Uh-huh.
And I was wondering if that is partly why I've been a little more spacey in the morning, because he said, you know, that could happen. But thank you for the reminder about the who meditation. I do wonder also if anyone else has been trying that.
Yeah.
I'll have to admit that I haven't.
Okay. No, you know, that's not a problem. I was really curious because if I think if you do it as suggested, I think there's a real shift that will happen. It's one of those sort of like magic secrets.
Well, now I will try it right now.
All right, everyone. Well, unless there's something more, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up for the day.
I'm sorry to ask this at the very last minute, but isn't Annette actually here?
No, I think she was not feeling well, so she got the meeting started and she hit record, and then I think she went to go lay down again.
Okay, thank you kindly. Sorry to be late.
No problem. Okay, folks. Well, I think she's going to leave she started the recording, and I think it's just going to end when we all leave. So, because I don't have controls to stop it.
Okay, thanks a million.
All right. See you all next week.
Yes, bye-bye.
We'll do chapter 7.
Yeah, thank
Love you all.
Love you too.
Bye. Bye, Bima.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.